workshop webinar. Lee, I see you in here. Can you hear me?
I can. Can you hear
Hello,
me?
Lee. How are you?
I'm doing good.
Good. How's your day going so far?
Pretty good. It won't let me start video. I don't know why.
Oh, is it saying it's like disabled for
Disabled
you?
by the host. Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
But my day is good. It's early here. Just kicking off work. Can't
Good.
complain.
Where are you in the world anyway?
I am in the Midwest United States. So I'm in Iowa by somewhat close to Chicago.
Cool. Okay. Great. I'm looking for where I can make you able to share your video, and I'm not seeing it.
The actual error it says is you can't start your video because the host has stopped it.
The host has stopped it.
It doesn't make any sense.
Make a co-host. Let's see this. Make a co-host.
Ooh, there you go.
Maybe this will help you.
There we
There you
go.
are. Hello.
Perfect.
Yeah. Cool. So yeah, welcome, Lee. Appreciate you being here today for this. This is going to be fun. You know, we have a number of people who registered, and I'm seeing a fraction of those people here right now. So I figure what we can do is probably just wait a little bit before we actually kick off.
Mm-hmm.
The plan is this. We've got this blocked for 3 hours. I don't think we're going to go 3 hours. I think it's going to be closer to half of that, or maybe 2/3 of that. So, you know, you could, if you're out there in the audience, you can expect maybe 2 hours today. That's what I think it'll do. But we'll see. We'll see what goes on here. But yeah, as we wait for more people to filter in, Lee, maybe we could just talk about some of the context for us as we get going. So let's start with you. Let's start with your bio. Give me all the details of you. Or an abridged version, if you like.
Yeah, I'll do the abridged version. So, hey everyone, my name's Lee. I'm the head of developer relations at Vercel, which is the creators of Next.js that we're talking about today, and a fast serverless platform for deploying your applications. My background and history is I've been a developer for about 10 years, primarily in product engineering to start, and then moving into DevRel in the past, let's say 3 years-ish. And I enjoy all things front end and design.
Awesome. You and this role that you're in now, head of developer relations, this is new, I think, for you, hey?
Yeah. I've been at Vercel for a little over a year now, just moved into this role very recently to grow our DevRel team. Just hired, well, actually 2 people. The first one started yesterday, hasn't been announced yet, but will be soon. And then the other one's starting very soon to grow out the squad of DevRel people.
That's awesome. And so, I mean, it's no secret now that Vercel just raised another round, right? I believe it was north of $100 million, which is awesome. Congratulations on that to you and the team. Is that going to beef up DevRel at Vercel by a large margin, or what's going to happen there?
Yeah. A lot of this funding is for a few different things. One of them is growing the team pretty drastically. So when I started at Vercel, there was like 30 people, and we're now at around 80. Cool. And we want to double that in the next year to grow infrastructure, product engineering, and DevRel as well too. So right now, well, prior to the start of this week, DevRel was just me. So we're going to have probably 4 to 5 by the end of the year, maybe at least 3. We'll see.
That's great. Well, I'm looking forward to all of the great stuff that comes as a result of that. So that's awesome. Yeah, so I guess I could do my brief intro. So I'm Ryan, and I'm on the DevRel team at Prisma. And if you are here, you probably know a little bit about Prisma already. Prisma is a company that makes open source software A big part of which is Prisma Client and the host of tools around that, right? There's Prisma Migrate and the Prisma CLI, Prisma Studio, all of this stuff that goes into what we call our kind of complete ORM. And this is what we think is the best way to work with databases if you're working, especially in TypeScript, but in Node.js. If you are needing to connect to a database and read data from it and write data to it, we think that using Prisma is the best way to do it. And so that's what we're going to talk about today, is how to do that in a Next.js application. So the plan is going to be this. We're going to head into, so we're at about 60 participants right now. We're going to head into the getting started sesh very soon. Maybe what I'll do is I'll just share my screen to give everyone who's here a sense of what we've got today. Let's see. Lee, are you seeing my screen?
Yes.
Cool. All right. So this is the app that we're working on. It's called Threads. Why did I choose this as a topic? I don't know. I was thinking about e-commerce at the time, and I saw these awesome high top shoes, and I said, we got to make an e-commerce app around clothing. So that's what we did. So basically, we've got this application on Next.js, of course, and all using Prisma to get this data here, these products. And then to be able to get things like reviews and to be able to write things like reviews, that's all part of this application. So we're going to be working on this. The deal here with this app is that it's basically all built. It's done, and you don't need to worry so much about the components and putting together styles and components on the front end of this. More so what we're going to be focusing on is shifting this from sort of a blank slate to using Prisma as we go through this workshop today. So that's the plan. I will point you to the repo at this point, and I'm going to copy this link and put it into the chat right now, if I can find it. Chat. All right, so workshop repo is here. So as a step one, everyone head over to that link and take a look at the README. In the README, you're going to see some instructions about the workshop modules that we've got. There's 5 of them today. And you'll see some instructions or at least some of the things that we're going to be talking about. This will be pretty casual, this particular workshop. You know, it's not like, here's a bunch of instructions and then go do this challenge and come back when you're done sort of thing. We'll step through all of this stuff just casually together so that we can talk about it and we can answer questions in the chat as we go. So yeah, that's the deal. The README here on the main branch should give you everything you need to know. And I think what we'll do at this point, if everyone could pull down this repo, just make sure you can do that as kind of a step one. That would be excellent. And we'll officially kick it off into to the getting started module 1 to get things going here. So why don't we do that? And Lee, I think you said you were able to do that yesterday. Hey, you were able to pull this down without any issue?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I was.
Well, that is just great. Here's what I'll do. I guess I should sort of
maybe one thing to recommend. It will require that you have Node.js installed on your machine.
Oh, of course.
So if you don't have that, make sure you install Node.js.
Good call. Yes. Yeah, that was definitely an oversight on my part. Definitely should have recommended that in the README, which I will update it to reflect that afterwards. So Bevan asks, where's the link? It's right above your note there, Bevan, in the chat. The link is here in the chat. If you are coming in new to the chat and you haven't, oh, you know what? I'm sending it not to the whole crowd, but to the panelists. That's why. Good call, Bevan. Repo link is coming to you. My bad. So there's the link. Lee put in a link to Node.js itself, so you can install Node if you don't have it. Should you trust the authors? I think we're trustworthy. That's just my opinion. Up to you though. If you want to participate, you'll have to trust us. That's all that I'll say there. But yeah, this is the link here. It's at my GitHub, Chenkie, and then next Prisma e-commerce. This is where we're going. So let's all get that pulled down. And if you wouldn't mind in the chat, give some indication if you've got that happening for you. Maybe just, if you could put a note in saying, I've got the repo or whatever, that would give us some indication that things are progressing. So let's do that. And okay, clone's just fine, got the repo, perfect. One thing that I also failed to put in the README, which we'll go over maybe now as people are pulling it down, is VS Code. I would assume there's a fair amount of people using VS Code. If you are, you're going to get a lot of help from VS Code if you install a specific extension. And that extension is the Prisma extension. So yeah, Prisma, go and search for it. And you should see this note adds syntax highlighting. So yeah, it's officially called Prisma, and that's the namespace, I guess, prisma.prisma. Adds syntax highlighting, formatting, autocompletion, etc. So if you're using VS Code, you'll want that. If you are using something else, that's just fine, but you won't get as much done automatically for you. In any case, okay, so let's see. Joey wants to get started. All right. Why don't we do that? I'm going to clone the repo too. I've got the repo pulled down already, of course, because I was working on it. But what I'll do is start fresh with everyone. So I'm going to clone it. So yeah, for those who might just be joining now or those who are wondering where we're at, if you're in the README of this repo, we're kind of kicking off the getting started section 1. And yes, let's get rolling with it. I'm just going to kill this here to make sure I don't have any conflicts. And we will do this. Opening it up in VS Code. And the first step here is going to be to npm install or yarn if you're using yarn. But I'm doing npm install here. What do you use, Lee? Are you a yarn guy?
I am a yarn guy, but npm has caught up quite a bit, and then yarn had the yarn workspaces fiasco or whatever the new version is. I'm still on yarn, right, but I have less allegiance.
What was that workspaces fiasco about? I don't know the history there.
Basically the new version of yarn, it kind of it is a tried and true breaking change. Like it changes it to the plug and play. I believe that's what it's called, plug and play. But it changes underlying how it works and how it caches, I believe. So yeah,
breaking stuff, that's not fun.
It works better for mono repos, I believe, is the intention.
Makes sense. Cool. Okay, so we're in number 1, getting started, or the 01 start branch, if you like. What I'll say right now is that 01 start and 01 finish, these branches, there's not much going on here. It's kind of just like the repo in a very bare state. What I'd like to just verify with everyone, though, before we go into that branch, the 01 start branch, is just on the main branch. So if you're here on the main branch, and if you've installed dependencies, just do an npm run dev and just see if you can get this to run in the browser for you. So if that runs for you, if you do an npm run dev and it's good to go, in theory, this should load up once it's ready. This is showing, it's already showing because I had it running before, but I just did npm run dev again, and now it's good to go. Still loads, good stuff. So just verify that. If any, I'll assume that's going to work for everybody, but if anyone is having trouble with that, just ping in the channel, in the chats. We'll try to figure that out. All right, so where are we at here? Download the repo, install dependencies, and tour the application. So yeah, quick tour. Very simple. This main page here does a query for all products that are in the products table. It's a very like the the usability of this isn't fully fleshed out. This is, pretty bare bones. We don't have any kind of pagination or anything like that. But we can click into an item, which you'll see here if you look into the URL bar, is it goes to a route of /products and then this ID. And this ID is generated by Prisma. And we're gonna see how we plug into that later down the line and can fetch things based on this ID with Next. And then some reviews. There's some reviews there. You can add a new review in and submit it, and it's gonna show up. 5 stars, submit, shows up there. And that's basically it. This application, it assumes via the data model that we've got like a users table. And we're just going to hard code a user for now. There's no like authentication system built in. There's nothing that is kind of true authentication and gives you like true user record. We're just going to hard code stuff on that end. But that's because, we only have so much time in this workshop, etc. And this buy now button doesn't do anything, right? So it's very bare bones, but this gives you hopefully a good starting point with Next and Prisma. So that's the deal. So if there are any questions on that, let us know. Everyone that is chiming into the chat recently and saying it's working, so that's excellent. What I will do now is kill this, and I will git checkout 01 start. Here we are at 01 start, and we will do, so yeah, I killed that, npm run dev. Let's run dev on this and see what we get. If I remember correctly, actually, this should be the same. This should just be like equal to main, really. Yeah, because I wanted to demo what's going on there while still maintaining the module / branch names. Of course, I've lost my instructions in the README because it's only on the main branch. Here we go. So we've stewarded the app. We're done that. We're heading into the second module now, which is to actually get going with Prisma. And this is where we're going to get started to see the actual, the good stuff. So do a git checkout on 02 start. Let's go there. And the way that I usually do this with workshops, you'll see that I wasn't able to change into that branch because I've got changes effectively in source control here. I don't know what's not, there we go. So dev.db, we're using a file system database. We're using SQLite for this workshop. And so I've made a change to the data because I added a review and now it wants me to do something with that change. And because this is, workshop stuff, I don't really care about losing that. So I'm just gonna force that change. And here we are at 02 start, right? Git branch, 02 start. Okay, npm run dev on that. And we will see what we get. What we get is nothing showing up here. And that's because we don't have a database yet. We don't have any kind of things set up for us to actually store any data. But that's where we're gonna go to now. And I'm gonna just have this handy so I can make sure I hit all of these points that I wanted to. Basically, we need to start by installing Prisma. If you installed dependencies, which I asked you to do at the start on the main branch, you're going to have Prisma already. And I didn't bother to take various parts out, or did I? Let me see. Prisma Client. So I did not. I didn't bother to sort of make each module branch have only the dependencies that we need for that module. So for example, at the 02 start branch, you have all of the dependencies that you need for by the time that you get to the end. And that's just to simplify things. But if you were starting out on a fresh Prisma project in a Next.js application, you've done create next app, etc., you would want to do npm install as a dev dependency Prisma. So you do this one. This gives you the Prisma CLI, which allows you to run various commands to create your migrations and to generate your Prisma client and this sort of thing. So this is the Prisma CLI. This is the thing, if you're following along with Prisma at all and development, you may have heard that we've got like this Rust engine, and we've got this sort of Rust core that it's all built in Rust. And we do that so that we can then have clients, so database access clients of various kinds in various different languages, like one for Node that works well with TypeScript. We've got one for Go, and there are more slated for the future as well. So we've got this like Rust core, and we can hit it from many different angles. And if you install the CLI, you're going to be effectively pulling down binaries for the Rust engine. So you would do this, npm install Prisma. I hesitate to have you actually go and do this fresh right now, because just as of this morning, we released version 2.26. When I made this repo, it was 2.25 was the latest. I think it'll be fine to go and install 2.26 if you want to, but I don't know. I haven't checked out to see if there's any breaking changes with this repo that I made. So what you would do though is a dev dependency, and it's Prisma, and then you would install at Prisma Client as a regular dependency. And at Prisma Client gives you the Prisma Client. This is the thing which you actually use to call into your database, to access your database. And this is important, obviously, because that's what you're going to be working with mostly in your either your Node.js code, or as we'll see in this workshop from various parts of your Next.js application, you're going to want to call into the Prisma client. So you'll want to install those two, and you'll be good to go. So yes, we need to initialize Prisma. In this branch, there's basically no Prisma stuff right now. And the very first step to take care of that would be to do npx init Prisma. Or sorry, npx Prisma init is what you want. So that calls into Prisma, the Prisma CLI, which we got here as a dev dependency. And the init command, what it does is it creates this Prisma directory here on the side. It also creates a .env file if there isn't one already. And in Prisma is this file called schema.prisma. And schema.prisma is a file that uses the Prisma schema language, the PSL. So it's a domain-specific language that is what you use to model your database. And it has other details like your data sources. The default one we just call DB. We give you a provider of Postgres by default, but we do support lots of databases. So Postgres, MySQL, SQLite, MS SQL, MongoDB early access is here. So there's lots of different options. We default you to Postgres, but in this case, what we want is SQLite. So go ahead and change that up, the provider there for SQLite. And then in the environment file, like if you click into the environment file, you're going to see this database URL. And it's specifically a Postgres connection. It connects to like a local Postgres instance. We just give you, dummy credentials that are probably not ones you actually have. But you'll want to change that up. You can either change things up in the environment file, or what I do is I just come in here and I do file. So it's file:/dev.db. You can call this whatever you want. I call it dev.db. And this is a SQLite database, essentially. The .db extension is for SQLite. It does not exist yet, but it will once we get rolling with a migration. Once we actually create some tables in here and get to a step a bit further on, this will get created for us by Prisma. So this file is where you do your work to model your database. And just taking a look to see if I'm hitting all my marks here. Initialize Prisma with Prisma init. That's good. Provide data models. That's the next step. And actually what I want to do too is click into here, and I want to make sure that I get all of the modeling as I should. But the crux of it is this: like to create a table essentially with Prisma, you provide the model keyword. So model basically refers to a table, and this is an app that deals with products. So we call for model product. A little bit of convention here. Table names. I mean, this is stuff that it's not a requirement, but it's what we do. And what we recommend is uppercase letter for your model name and keep it singular. That's just, convention. You're free to do something like products though, if you want to. But this is what you'll see like throughout the Prisma docs. Okay, so a model, the very first thing it needs is an ID. And this can take various shapes. If you wanted to have like, an ID column that was like an auto incrementing integer, for example. That's, that's pretty common. You would say that this would be an int, for example. So here's the kind of the pattern here when you're creating models. You do your field name, which is ID here, and then you do the type. So it can be int, it can be string. There's a bunch of options here for you. Big int, Boolean, bytes, right? Datetime. Like there's all these scalars that we've got. A lot of times you're going to be working mostly with ints or strings. If you were doing an auto incrementing thing, you would do like ID ints, and then you would use the ID directive to say that this is the primary key for the database. So add ID gives you the primary key. And then you can do this. You can call default, and you can say you want this to auto increment. So what that's going to do is it'll basically tell your database. This is all just like instructions for your database when you go to create tables, for example. This will tell your database to auto increment that field and just keep it moving up. What I like to do though, is I like to use strings, and I like to, we got to call that ID. And I like to say that the default is a collision resistant unique ID, CUID. I like to use this because, I don't know, auto incrementing integers are fine, I guess, but I like the fact that like a unique ID sort of, there's no chance of collision really, right? Like, I don't know, integers could collide somehow. I guess like databases protect you from that. They won't let you create an integer ID twice, but I like to have like a string CUID. I don't know, that's just me. You can also choose like a universal unique ID if you wanted to. That's longer, I guess technically more safe, but CUID is good as well. So I think that should be fine. And once we're done that, so that's it for the ID. Once we're done that, we go on to the other fields. So I had a name, I think, as one of the fields here. I'm just gonna, here's what I'll do. I'll pull this over to my other monitor just so I can cheat and make sure I've got things happening correctly. Name, and then description is a string. And what else do we have? Image. So I've got some data here, by the way. If you look into this data folder, there's like this products JSON. So you've got like an image link. You can work with the data that I was working with, and I'll show you how to put this in just a bit. And someone's asking in the chat if we can drop the repo link. Lee, are you able to drop that in?
Absolutely, I will do that.
Thank you so much. All right, where were we? Image, yes, that's just a string because it's a link that we're gonna point to. Price, that's going to be an integer. So here's an interesting thing, right? Price, I don't know what you've done in the past when you are dealing with currency, but I don't like to store currency as float with decimal points, because then you run into issues with like rounding, and when you're doing math on your dollars, essentially it can create issues. So instead, I like to store it as the number of cents, and then when I go to display things, I just divide by 100. And that's what like Stripe does. If you've worked with Stripe, they store everything as just cents instead of dollars and cents, fractions. Okay, price. And then so that's good for this one. If you'll notice, if you click, or if you do a save, so Command S, if you've got the Prisma extension installed, you should get everything formatted for you. So you'll get this spacing done. So I don't know if you saw that, but like if you're, wonky on your spacing here, that's one of the nice things. It just auto formats things, keeps it nice and tidy for you. What else to say here about this model before we move on? If you wanted to, you can get more specific about your types. So this is, so we use type string as like your kind of bare bones way of getting a text field, but it means different things in different databases. So in SQLite, it means one kind of thing. In Postgres versus MySQL, it means like slightly different things. But we also support like native DB types. And I guess it doesn't work with SQLite, the native DB types, I don't think. But if you were using Postgres, for example, maybe it'll even do it for me if I switch for a second to Postgres and I do db dot, yeah, there we go. So like you can do db.varchar, and you can give it a length if you want it to be 200 characters, for example. Like you can get very specific about your actual database type that you want. But especially like if we're just working with developments and if we've got SQLite, it's fine just to use strings. At least I think it is. Cool. Yeah. Anything that comes to mind, Lee, as we're stepping through this? Any thoughts, questions?
I think one of the really nice things, just a comment on this that I found, is when you get used to the Prisma schema syntax and how you define these, it's just great that you can easily swap it out between projects and easily change out whether you want to have SQL or Postgres. I found that to be really beneficial.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I found that too. Like once you're used to it, you can move fairly quickly through it, which is very nice. You can model your database in very little time, and you get all the benefits of type safety derived from it for you, which we'll see as we get going. Oscar says the Prisma extension does not load. So Oscar, make sure you've got the official one, Prisma. Prisma's here. Should look like this. If it's not loading, I don't know. Maybe try. What you could do is try reloading VS Code. One thing too is like we just released this morning version 2.26. Maybe there's an issue with it or something. Maybe there's a way to get like an older version of it. I'm not exactly sure.
It appears I'm on the newest version and it seems to be working. I would say try restarting VS Code. Sometimes my extensions get in a funky state and I have to reload.
Yeah. Yep. I have hit that as well. All right. You did the same. Hey, Oscar. For me, it works just fine, but VS Code wanted me to reload. Okay. So yes, Oscar, maybe try a couple other ways to reload, see if that works. We're going to move to the next model as you do that. What we'll do, we'll
install that. We can still progress forward. You just won't have like the TS completion and the syntax highlighting, right?
Exactly. Yep. So you still will get the benefits if you can't get the extension. All right. So we've got our product. And so what we could do at this point, in fact, it's probably beneficial just to do this now. I wasn't going to actually run a migration yet, but let's do it so that we can actually see this see what this does. So after you've got your model modeled out, you would do npx Prisma. You would use Prisma Migrate. And in this case, you've got a couple different options. Like there's a couple of different ways to migrate your database. If you're in development, you can actually do, what is it? npx Prisma db push, I think is a command that we have. I can't remember if it's still experimental or not. But what I want to show you is npx Prisma migrate dev. So this says, I'm in development, do a migration for me. Asks you for the name of the migration. And if there are those who aren't familiar with migrations, it's basically like a history of the recipes and their executions that get your database to a certain state. So what you get when you run a migration is this. You get this migrations directory. You get this SQL file, which looks like it is doing some stuff for us that we want it to do, which is to create that product table, to get an ID, name, description, image, price. Those are the fields that we put into our Prisma model. So that's what you want. What you get when you do a Prisma Migrate dev is it creates the migration file for you, and then it runs the migration. And there are ways to separate that process, but typically you want to do both in the same shot. So we provide a way for you to do that. Once you've got that, you'll see dev.db. So this is the SQLite database that got created as we did our migration. And what we can do now is we can do npx Prisma Studio. So this is another product that we've got, Prisma Studio. And Prisma Studio gives us, can you see Studio here, Lee? Perfect. Prisma Studio is basically a GUI for your database. It's like, it's similar in some ways to other table management clients. You get your fields, you have a way to add records, etc. But it's a bit different in that it gives you more capabilities that are specific to Prisma. And we'll see that as we go. So Craig, you're saying you're getting an error with the migration. Which error are you getting there, Craig? If you've got any details, any output you can provide. I wonder if it's, so schema parsing. So it sounds like there might be an error in your schema. somewhere. So maybe check for that. If you do have the Prisma extension, you should see it. It should be apparent. Like if I had, a typo, it should underline it. So just double check for that. See if there's any typos. .env not set for file.db. Yeah, that's it. There's that as a possibility. So make sure your provider is SQLite, file :/dev.db. Protocol file. Yes, URL should point to this. So I'm going to paste this in just so people can copy it. Here is what you should have as your URL. So after the equals, let's put in that file like that. And if all else fails, head over to the main branch in GitHub, and you can just sort of check through there. All right, so we've got our product. Now, what I want to do is before I go and create data here, I actually want to model out kind of the rest of this and show you kind of how we do this so that we don't run in, because there are cases where like if we create data and then we want to update it later, we might have to delete some of it to make it happen. There's a whole thing. There are, migrating data can be a bit of it can be a bit of a dicey issue. So, and there are ways that we help you with that, but just for the sake of simplicity here, I want to basically model out all of the tables. We have 3 tables that we're working with today. We'll just model them all out and we'll be done with it. So I mentioned this one for user. Again, we don't have any actual like user authentication for real, but we just have a user table to give us kind of, a halfway point there sort of thing. So let's get a model called user. It needs an ID. And so the add ID, again, that means it's the primary key. We'll have first name is a string. We'll have last name, string as well. What else? We have email, string. And here is where, so I'll save this. Here's where things are going to get a little bit interesting is how we deal with relations. So if you're coming from a relational database management system, you probably know how to relate one table to another based on, primary keys, etc. And Prisma allows you to specify relations right in your models. So let's think about this. Users are going to have, well, let's start this way. When you go to buy a product, it's going to be bought by a user. I guess you could say this could also be called customer if you like, but we're calling it user in this case. So product will be bought by a user. And so a user will have products. So this is kind of like a many-to-many case, right? A product will have many users that have bought it, and a user will buy many products essentially. And the way that we model that out is simply like this. We say products on this user is going to point to the product model. And we use the kind of like the array brackets like that to say that it's a many-to-many. Or that it's relating to many products rather. And if we save this, if you got the extension installed and we save, what we get is some autocompletion. So this is really nice because it helps you to get a bunch of code written for you. So what do we have here? We have some stuff that was completed automatically for us. This isn't what we're going to end up with. I'm going to change this up a bit because this in its current form isn't a true many-to-many relationship. But if you had like a one-to-many, so a single product has, a product has a single user that it's related to. This is what you would do. You see things like this. You got a user ID, which is a string, and it put this in here, user for us, which points to the user model up here. And this like kind of ties up the relation. It says that a user belongs to a user. This side of it here, like this part of it is the Prisma specific stuff. This field here, uppercase user, that won't end up in your database. Rather, that's just something for the Prisma client to use to allow you to tie your data together. User ID, that will be in the database. So kind of rule of thumb, if you see a scalar like this, string, int, etc., that's like a field in your database. But if you see it pointing to something that is another model, that is generally like it putting a relation together, and it won't necessarily be in the database in this case. But in any case, user like this, we don't want a one-to-one, we want a many-to-many. And many-to-many, there are different ways to manage many-to-many relationships. You can use a pivot table. So you could actually model out your pivot table, but Prisma actually does work for you in this regard. And all you have to do is say that you want users to point to the user model and have the bracket, array bracket syntax like that. And what this does is it creates like this virtual, I guess you can call it like a virtual pivot table. It's something that exists just in Prisma Client to tie this together for you. You don't actually have to have a legit pivot table modeled out here. Instead, you can just rely on Prisma Client to tie these things together. So we've got questions. Are there model name length constraints for many-to-many relationships? So name length, are we thinking like the field name here or the model name? Model name length is what you're asking for specifically. Not that I know of. I haven't seen that. So I'd be surprised if there were. Actually, I suppose at some point there would have to be some kind of constraint at the database level, but I don't know of any specifically. So I'm not too sure. Can I migrate a database already running on Heroku? Yes, there are specific considerations around that for cloud deployments, including a shadow database, which we're going to talk about at the end. We're going to tie things up with talking about how you might deploy these kinds of things. We have a question. Can you talk a little bit about what databases you would choose and what scenarios? For me, it is basically just Postgres all the time. That's what I go to now. Lee, do you have any preferences?
So when I'm just getting started, especially just building something locally, I enjoy using just the SQLite, SQLite. A lot of people really enjoy Postgres. I think it's probably more common for larger applications. As far as like specific application examples and what database you would want to use, I would say it really comes down to personal preference. There are some like intricacies and features of Postgres that might make it more appealing over just, SQLite. But it's highly contextual to the type of thing you're trying to build.
Yeah.
A lot of them are more advanced Postgres stuff too, I would say. Like if you're just doing CRUD actions, you'll be fine with SQL or Postgres.
Yeah. I will say that for a long time I used MongoDB, and looking back now, I wish that I hadn't.
Same.
Yeah, same for you.
Yeah. I wish I had learned, you get like doubled down on just good old SQL because it's
absolutely
still going strong.
Yep. And yeah, like MongoDB, just like once things start to grow, especially, you just realize all these pain points of like, doing things as simple as like running reports gets challenging. I end up using Mongo in a way that like kind of looks like a relational database anyway, like tying collections together and populating between collections and stuff like that. So I'm on SQL now.
I feel like I always lie to myself when using some NoSQL-esque solutions because I'm like, this data isn't that relational.
Right,
and then like it always turns out to be relational.
Mm-hmm.
So like I'm sure there are specific use cases where it makes a ton of sense, but the majority of the time for the stuff I'm building, there ends up being relations.
Yep, absolutely. I'm there with you. Okay, so one more question, then we'll move on. Any preference for Couchbase? I haven't tried it myself. Do you have any thoughts on Couchbase, Lee?
I also haven't.
So no thoughts, sorry. But I've heard good things from Couchbase. So I'll give it a shot at some point. In any case, we've got user and product tied together through a many-to-many relation, and that is just great. What we're going to do now is do our last table, and it is a model called review because products will have reviews. So what do? We copy over this is what I do anyway. I'll just go up, copy that line for the ID because for all my tables, I just want like a string for the ID. I want it to be a collision resistant unique ID. And then I'll put on the fields that we need, like a rating. This is going to be like 1 to 5, basically. And that's going to be an integer. One thing we've got in Prisma, you can do, I guess you can't do it in SQLite, but we've got enums. So you can do an enum. And I guess you could do like a rating enum. And you could, I don't know, I forget the syntax exactly, but what is it, like 1, 2, right? If you wanted to just have specify values that the data that the field could have, you could set up an enum, but I don't think we support that in SQLite as far as I know. But take a look for that in the docs if you're interested. In any case, rating will be an integer. Then we'll have the text of the review. That's going to be a string. And then, so those are like the only kind of fields that are native, I suppose, to this table. The others are going to be relation fields. What we want to do is tie things together here. This is what I really like about Prisma is when you come to the point where you've got to relate data from one table to the next, it gets easy to reason about. You say, okay, a review, that's going to belong to a user. So a user is going to provide a review. So maybe what I can do is say that a review has a user. And that will just point to user like this, the user model. And then if you save that, everything gets set up for you. So you come up to user, what changed there? We have this review field now pointing to this review model and saying many of them. So a single user can have many reviews. That's the default we give you. One thing to note is that your relation field names will be exactly as the model name is in this case. So review, uppercase R, you get your uppercase R review here. I always go and just change that to lowercase review. And the reason is so that I can stay consistent with everything else, etc. So check for that if you want to change things up. And I think, was there one over here? No, I already changed that. Okay. So yes, user points to a relation to the user model. And again, this is sort of the Prisma client virtual thing that we do. And then user ID, that's an actual string value pointing to the user table that we store in the database. The next thing that we'll have, the very last thing, I suppose, is to point to a product. So a review will be for a specific product. Because of that, I know I can come over here and say, this review belongs to a specific product. So I just need one product. I don't do many like that with the array brackets. I just point to a single product. And you get the red squiggly initially because this isn't complete yet. You don't have everything done in the other spots, like on the product table. But if you just do, again, Command S, you get everything built out for you. So product has a relation to the review table. And this is another thing to look out for is whether or not you want to pluralize these field names. So again, we take just the model name and that we use that as the field name when we do that auto completion. But I come in here and I do lowercase on the field name and then I put an S at the end. That's just my preference, but it's up to you what you want to do. Okay, I think this looks pretty complete. Just looking at the questions here. Is there a way to configure that? I'm assuming configuring the Prisma extension to do certain things. Not that I know of. There might be. I have never found it. But if you dig through the extension options, maybe there's a way to do it. If so, let me know. Okay, so we've got our modeling done. This is probably like the longest part of everything. That's why we're taking a ton of time here on section 2. What we can do now, I'll show you how this looks if we are to try to migrate this. Actually, this should migrate just fine because we don't have any data. So if you're at this point, you haven't created any data, you can do npx Prisma Migrate dev. That will give you a new migration. You enter the name for the new migration. New stuff is what I'll call that. And in the new stuff migrations directory here, you get migration.sql, and look what it's giving us. All of the instructions to create things in the database. That, again, runs automatically for you. And we can do npx Prisma Studio once more to see what this looks like.
And while you're talking about this, I'd love to just share like my perspective on migrations as like, primarily front-end dev.
Yep.
It was something that as I got into the backend world, I guess I didn't realize the significance and the importance of database migrations, because when I was building full stacky things, I wasn't even really considering that. And then once I started to do full stack stuff at a company, I realized the importance that these migrations play and how critical it is. And to be honest, a lot of the DX for migration tools that exist out there, at least the ones I had previously used, weren't the greatest. So I really, really enjoy how simple it is to bring migrations to, any application with Prisma. I think it's something that's underappreciated in the ecosystem because migrations are are really difficult. Like nobody wants to write all that stuff out manually.
Yep, absolutely. Yep, I 100% agree with you. And I used to not see the value so much in migrations. I used to think like, well, whatever, I'll just like deal with the database state at whatever state it's at. I'll go and put things in manually in prod, just like change tables in prod and stuff like that. And pretty soon, once you start dealing with like legit applications at scale, it's like, no, that's not not a good way to do things. So yes, I'm there with you. And yeah, what I like about it too is like, you get migrations as default in various ecosystems like Laravel, for example. I used to be a Laravel developer. Migrations are just native there. But if you are wanting to if you don't want to be kind of shoehorned into a specific framework, but you want to work with like whatever in Node, in this case, like if it, whether it be Express or Fastify or Happy or whatever, you can do so. And you can just bring migrations with you with Prisma. So big benefits there. All right. So what do we got? We have got our products and our users and our reviews here in Prisma Studio. And what you can see here, if you click into user, is you should be able to create a record. Let's go through that. That'll be sort of our first step. And I'm going to show you kind of the benefits of Prisma Studio over just like Table Plus or whatever other database client. So go and add a record for yourself as step one. So you enter your data and then just click Save Change. And then you should get your ID and stuff like that. And the benefit here of Prisma Studio, like right off the bat, is you can see information about like the shape of your database. You can see that like the relation between user and products is a one-to-many. So one user has many products. You see that because of this array brace syntax. And then you can click into this and you can say like, what are the products that are related to this user? We don't have any products right now, so we're not showing anything. But once we create some and we relate them to a user, we're going to see them show up here, which is awesome. It's really nice for exploring your data. It's a very nice way to do that. So come up here, let's add some records. Once again, I've got some data here for you in products.json, and there's no way, unfortunately, to import. At least not that I know of. Maybe things change, but I don't think there's a way to import from like JSON or anything directly here. So instead, like, it's just a matter of hand bombing them in. But there's a tool we have called Prisma DB Seed. You can seed your database. And it doesn't, though, necessarily work too well with Next.js. Do you know about this issue, Lee? About Prisma DB Seed not really working with Next?
I don't know.
I was trying it out yesterday, and there's some open issues about it. It's got something to do with how we want to use modules, and then something that's happening in Next is using CommonJS or something. It's something in that regard, and things are conflicting and whatnot. But I'll just quickly give a little brief on how you would do it. You'd come into the Prisma directory and you'd include a file called seed.ts or .js, and you would have an async function main, and then you'd have some data. You can get it from a directory, whatever, and then you can like loop over your data for let item of data, and it'd be like await Prisma product create. You would do something like this and create your data, and then you can just run this script. And this is nice if you are working with a team and you want to provide like a base set of data that you can have people migrate in, seed their database with as they get started. It's very nice for that. But yeah, this is not working in Next as far as I can tell. But if you want to explore that a little bit more, there's some open issues. You can check those out. Yeah, and Joey's got this instruction about TS node. I tried that, Joey, and I wonder if it works for you. Let me know if it works for you, Joey, because it wasn't working for me. This TS node instruction that you can put in your package.json wasn't having it. In any case, go ahead and add some products. Let's add them in. So first one, hi, top shoes. Description, these are sick kicks. Image, link. Obviously, you wouldn't want to do this for a lot of data, but we don't have that much. All right, save that change, add a record. You can add multiple at a time. So for example, I'll show you on this one. I just saved that one right after I was done with it. But you can instead have multiple open at a time. So like I won't save that, but I'll add another record, and both those are brown, so they're active. All right. I hope everyone loves my choice of clothing that I've got for this store. I don't think I'd ever wear this stuff, but somebody will.
Speaking of clothing, I'm wearing my Prisma shirt from
Oh,
last.
that's cool. That's a cool Prisma shirt.
I came prepared.
Nice. Is that like an older shirt?
I think so. Yeah, they sent it to me after being a speaker at the last one.
Nice. That's cool.
Or maybe it was 2 years ago. I can't remember. Time flies.
It's a nice shirt. I haven't seen that one before. So question, want to be more performant to use create many? Yep, you can definitely do create many. I mean, if you have just a small set of data, looping over it and calling create is not a big deal. Create many is newer. The create many API came at version 2.20, I think, and we're at 2.26 today. So for those, if you're on an old version, hopefully you're not, but you might not have it. But yes, create many is a good option for seeding your database. Okay, we've got our data. So what's next? Well, let me look at my README to see where we're at and what I wanted to do. In module 2, migrate. So we've migrated, we've got data. The last thing I'll show here is getting a global Prisma instance. So let's take it back to this example. If we were seeding the database, this will be our sort of foray here into looking at what it looks like to get the Prisma client instantiated. So you would do import Prisma clients. Oops, I've got the wrong things going on here. Prisma client from @prisma/client. Then you would need an instance. You'd say constant of Prisma equals a new Prisma client. No, not that. New Prisma clients. And then you could import your data, loop over it, or call create many by doing Prisma dots. Then looking here at what we've got, again, this is all when you model your data in the Prisma schema and then you do a migration. What happens under the hood is Prisma like generates this type-safe database access client for you through the Prisma client. So then what you get is all of your models. You get product, review, user. Those are all things that we modeled out. And what you'll be able to do is call various methods on this table, essentially. You can, where's create? Create one. You can delete one, right? All of the methods that you would figure should be there are there. And so that's exactly what you do. You create some data. You'd say, here's the data that I want to create. The benefit, again, this is all type safe. So you are going to be able to get autocomplete. So what needs to go into a product when you create it? Well, you need a description, right? That was given to you there in the dropdown. You need a name, price, etc. And it won't let you do things that are invalid. So like data has got the red squiggly right now because this data object to create a record here isn't complete. We only have a bit of it. But the other thing you get is like, it knows that description should be a string. So if you try to put a number in there, it's gonna tell you. So type number is not assignable to type string. So that's perfect because if you're a developer, you don't know much about the database, you come in to create a new endpoint or whatever to put some data in a table, you'll be guided essentially through what you can and cannot do when it comes time to creating data. And same goes for querying data too. I'll point to, just quickly before we move on, if you want to look at like where this stuff is coming from, like these types, right? So Prisma dot product, like how does it know about all this stuff? That is through here. You go into node modules, into .prisma, and you look at index.d.ts. This is the file that gets generated. Every time you make a change to your model and you migrate or generate your Prisma client, it's going to come into this file and put types in there for you. So you can look for product. Here we go, export type product. There is everything that we need. And this, again, just comes from your Prisma model. We don't have to write this by hand. This is all generated. So it is very nice. Yes, so look into node modules dot Prisma. Where did it go? I guess, yeah, it just unwrapped itself. Dot Prisma, I guess, slash clients, and then index.d.ts. You'll find some goodies in there. But you generally don't have to think about that spot. Okay, c.ts, we're going to get rid of you. And here's what I want to do now to finish out this module. I know this has been like a forever module. Apologies about that, but we're just about past like the really heavy stuff, and then we'll get into some fun stuff with next. I want to create a global instance of Prisma. And this is because in development, at least, it can get a little bit hairy when you are constantly doing hot module replacements and you're reloading and stuff like that. In terms of like Prisma creating too many instances if you do it in certain ways. So the typical way is you would come into your file that you're working on, pages, for example. You'd come into here. We're going to see this in the next module, but you would import your Prisma client. You would do cons Prisma equals a new Prisma client, right? You would do all that. And you might do that in like plenty of different files, but that is not going to give you good results, especially in the context of Next.js. So instead, what we're going to do is create this global Prisma. So here's the to-do: instantiate Prisma and provide it as a global. I don't remember what this code looks like, but I can go to my main branch here and just do a good old copy paste, and that will suffice. So here we go. Boom. So let's see what's going on. Importing Prisma Client, creating an interface. We're calling it custom node.js global. It's got this Prisma object on it, which is a type Prisma Client. Then we're saying global.prisma. So we're basically wanting to set up like this global here. And if you're thinking like, well, globals, that's not such a good thing, right? Like I thought we're getting away from global stuff when we're dealing with modules and all that. This isn't going to be the case in every environment that you're working in that you would want to do a global. Like if you're working on a node API, maybe just like export a singleton. This is the, I guess, recommended way anyway to do this in terms of Next.js. As of now, this, who knows if this changes, but we're always looking for better ways to integrate Prisma with Next.js. And right now, this will give you at least a pretty decent experience. I don't know, Lee, is there anything, I don't know if you've got much experience with this sort of setup, but if there's anything you want to speak to, especially on the Next.js side of it specifically, feel free.
Yeah, basically, it comes down to how Next.js handles compilation when running locally. So by default, so some applications or some frameworks, you would run your command locally and it would build all of the pages in your application. And then when you navigate from your index route to your about route, the about route is already generated, right? It's already been built. It's generated ahead of time. Because Next.js is a hybrid framework and it allows static pages, dynamic pages, and everything in between, it does on-demand compilation. And it also does this because it's a faster developer experience. So even if you have, 5,000 pages, your application startup time, your dev server startup time is still really fast because it doesn't have to wait to compile on those. Instead, it compiles them on demand. Now, where I'm going with this, the con of this is that when it is compiling those on demand, if you are not configuring something like the Prisma client in a specific way, you end up opening up new connections and recreating those objects every single time that you, for example, reload the page or navigate to another page. And specifically, if you're trying to do like connections to a specific database that might not have a very high connection limit, you can exasperate those limits quickly. So it's important to have this set up to get around that.
Awesome. Thank you for that. That's a good amount of detail. Yep. So the global is your friend in this case. And what happens now is instead of importing Prisma client from at Prisma/clients, like we did already in c.ts, you'll import it from this directory. You'll go like import Prisma from ./db essentially, because it's got the barrel file here that it's exporting from. And we'll see that. We'll see that when we go to create stuff. Okay, so I'm realizing that I'm kind of blending modules 2 and 3 together on the fly because module 3 deals with writing data, viewing it, deals with the seed script. We've done a lot of that already. So here's what we'll do. We're going to take a little break because we've been going for a little over an hour. Let's take, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 minutes, grab some water or a bio break, and we'll be back with more. And we're going to move kind of into section module 3.5, I guess, and onward into making queries in a next application. So yes, go have a break, and we'll be back.
Sounds great.
All right. All right. I'm back. You there, Lee?
I am.
What is shaking? Is it hot where you are?
A bit. It is a high of 80 degrees Fahrenheit today.
Got it.
So
not bad.
Decent. It's not unlivable.
You're right. It's not like the Pacific Northwest.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty hot where I'm at. I'm in Ottawa, Canada, and it's pretty hot right now. Like it's again not it's not like 120 or whatever, but it's something. Somebody asked in the chat, can we give an example of the global Prisma that's JavaScript? And what I think, so I'm whipping up a gist here. I think it's just a matter really of removing all of the typings. So this interface can go declare const global. Yeah, that's a TypeScript thing, so that can go. Const Prisma, export default Prisma. I think this would be all you would need. Create public gist. So I'll put this in the chat. This is untested, untried, but have a look, see if it works for you. I think this is all, I don't know. I think that's all you need for JavaScript. You just, drop the type-ins.
That looks right.
Cool. All right. So where are we at? So we kind of got a little bit of the way through section 3, module 3, because I was going to just like show Prisma Studio in the third section and then just talk about the seed script. We're already done with that. The last item there, apply types. So this is interesting. Like it ties into this topic of TypeScript versus JavaScript. In this case, I should share a screen actually. Let me do that. Share screen. Desktop 1. You got my Prisma Studio there.
Mm-hmm.
No, my VS Code. So yes, types. So yeah, we're in TypeScript land right now. This is something that I kind of took for granted, which I generally take for granted these days. I'm default TypeScript all the time, but I realize not everyone is using TypeScript. I really love TypeScript. I think all of the extra effort to learn it and to create interfaces and types and typing everything as you go, even though it takes longer, it is well worth it. It's going to save you a lot of stress in the long run. You're going to find bugs that you wouldn't have known about had you been just in general TypeScript or JavaScript rather. And I think Ben Awad, the way he put it, is working in JavaScript is doing it in a hard mode. And TypeScript helps you to be easy mode. So I assume, Lee, you're a TypeScript fan. This is an assumption, but I don't know for sure. So you tell me.
Yeah, I do enjoy TypeScript. I'm still learning all of the intricacies of it, but from what I have learned so far, I've really enjoyed it.
Nice.
A lot of my past projects were, if they weren't anything too big, I was like, I'll just use JavaScript. And now that I've been working on larger code bases more often, I really see the value in TypeScript there too.
Nice. That's cool. Excellent. Yes, TypeScript. I love it. So one thing we can talk about to kind of round out this third section then would be types that come from Prisma. So here's the deal. In the node modules directory, we looked at this, the .prisma directory, into client, into index.d.ts. You get these types like product, for example, that informs your VS Code experience about what you can do on the Prisma client, but it also gives you types that are useful for other places in your application. So let's say, for example, you wanted to be working with some, your data, the shape of your data in your front end. Let's say it corresponded like 1-to-1 with this type of product that got generated for you. What you can do is like, you can be here in your index, for example, and you can say, so here's a good example, home props. This gets applied to the home components. So it talks about like what props are going to come from the getServerSideProps function. And so what you could do, instead of saying this is an any array, this product's right here, you could say it's a product array. And product here is going to come from Prisma Client. It gets imported like this. Import product from Prisma Client. Now what this does is if you're working with those props here, you can see what's there, right? So you could say props products. It's not such a good example because I'm gonna have to like map, right? You can map, take a product. You can see what's there on product. You can see that it's got those specific properties. And that's really useful. Like if you're mapping over stuff as we're doing here, you can see what you can work with. Like this parameter here, P, which just refers to a product. I'm a single letter variable type person. I apologize for those who don't like this, but yeah, I like single letter variables. And I think it's especially okay if you're working with TypeScript because you get to see like what it refers to specifically. You have a concrete definition for it. So anyway, all that to say, like if you can use the types that come from Prisma to help augment your experience in your front end. And you can do other things too. Like we're going to see this a little bit later on, but like you can, I think we got something later on called like product with count or something like that. And so you can take your products and you can union it with like, I think we have later on, it's this, that we have to do counts, reviews is a number, right? So you can create your own types and you can collaborate with existing types from Prisma, stuff like this. So yeah, anyway, just a quick note, like feel free to dig into the types that get generated by Prisma and they're super useful for lots of things. Another thing I'll show you too is like you can bring in Prisma, this top level Prisma export, and then Prisma points to Prisma dot. On this Prisma type here, we get lots of stuff. We get like, well, I wonder if there's one specific, yeah, product. We get all these types like product, average, aggregation, input type. Like these are very specific to Prisma, but some of them might be useful, right? Like if you were taking some input, for example, you could say you want to use, what is it? Product input. No, product. Yeah, product create input. So this would tell you essentially what needs to be present for you to create new data, to create new rows in your table. So anyway, these types, they become super useful. You get them for free. Feel free to use them, that sort of thing. Okay, that finishes out section 3. I'll pause for questions now. And if there is anything that people are wondering about before we move to section 4 is where we're going to start actually working with this stuff in Next.js. So we've done a lot of work to get ourselves ready to make queries, and we're going to do that in just a sec. But if there are any questions, please feel free to drop them in. And I'll just pause for a second for that. I know there's the chat, there's also the Q&A for webinars, I guess. So I should probably check there too. Q&A is clear. And I'll double check for what came through, any recommendations. Next.js Prisma Apollo using update and buggy. I don't have any concrete recommendations, unfortunately, Peter. Sorry. I don't know, Lee, do you have any advice around Apollo, use with Apollo?
Nothing in particular. I would say if you need GraphQL subscriptions, then I can see the use case for Apollo. If you're just trying to do like simple queries and mutations, you can consider GraphQL requests. It's a little bit slimmer. It also depends if you're doing it on the client side or the server side.
Yeah, I've run into this. What would you recommend around this, Lee? You want to use getServerSideProps to do server-side rendering. You want to you've got a GraphQL API. you want to basically use something like GraphQL request, really slim, to do that initial request in
Yep.
getServerSideProps. But then you want to basically give that data and its state to Apollo to take over on the client. Is there like a way, a specific way to do that? That's like, the good way.
So just responding to somebody's question in the chat, GraphQL request is an npm package, and your question is basically how do you do the handoff between data that you fetched on the server from some GraphQL query? How do you hand that off to the client to then consume, right? So I'm probably I will call out that I've had not great experiences with Apollo in the past personally, so I'm probably a little jaded. So that's just, I will just throw that out there now. And I've also had a really good experience with using SWR. And I know I'm probably biased since it's a Vercel thing. React Query is another one. But typically what I do when I'm using GraphQL and Next.js is I like the GraphQL request library because of the DX of it. Versus just a vanilla fetch. And it's like a very small wrapper just to make your life a little easier doing your queries and your mutations. But so I use that on getServerSideProps or getStaticProps or wherever I'm putting something on the server. And then I can forward that information as a prop to my component, and I can actually seed the initial cache of SWR with that data. So then what happens, the initial cache gets seeded with that data, and I'm still able to fetch additional data on the client side or update that cache with optimistic updates, optimistic UI, which is essentially like showing the changes immediately while the request is happening in the background. I'm still able to do all that and have my functioning single page application client side JavaScripty stuff without needing to pull for a larger library. Because I think if you also look at the package size, the bundle size of SWR versus Apollo, there's a pretty significant difference there too.
That's true. Yeah, absolutely. Does SWR, I've never used it. Is it, does it give you like a graph, like, is it GraphQL first in some ways if you want it to be? Like, is it, I don't know, is it GraphQL native, for example?
It's very similar. So for those who have used React Query, it's very similar to React Query in the fact that it is just a React hook that gives you all of the boilerplate for the intricacies of fetching data on the client side in JavaScript that you don't want to think about. So what happens if there's an error? What if I want to do retries? What if I want to do polling? How do I manage that cache? All these things are abstracted into a query. And the way that it works is you get to define the fetcher. And that fetcher can be just fetching JSON from a REST API, or it can be from a GraphQL API. So it works fine with both. I will call out though that depending on how complex your GraphQL setup is and how you want to normalize your data between like really complex nested subqueries, Apollo has some good stuff for how they handle the cache there. But you also need to read like a PhD to understand that because it's tricky stuff. It's really tricky stuff.
Yeah, I've seen some of that a couple levels deep. And it is, you're absolutely right. Okay, cool. I want to give SWR a spin. I've been playing with React Query a lot, and I like the ergonomics of it. So if SWR gives something similar, that's really cool. Awesome.
For all intents and purposes, the main difference between SWR and React Query is that SWR is a smaller package size, but it has pretty much the exact same feature set as React Query. So they're both great.
That's awesome. I will check it out. Thanks, Lee. Cool. Well, let's move along, and we're gonna get into Prisma queries. So one thing I'll say is that I've been hand bumming my way all the way from like, what branch am I on? 0.1 start still. Git branch 0.2 start. MREP module 4. If you are following along and you're doing just like I'm doing, fine, that's just fine. But you can also switch into the starting point for each module if you want. It's up to you. If you're comfortable where you're at, that should be fine. So what we'll do here is we will work in getServerSideProps. And basically the thing we got to do is get our data during the server-side render make it available through props on this products key, and then give it down to our function to display. And this is this is like where the light bulb turned on for me, I think. When I first started learning about Next, and especially Prisma along with Next, it was like, this is super cool, because what you can effectively do is make what look like database queries on the client side, but it's actually on the server side. And, you know, if you've been around Next for a while, that might not be a surprise, but I remember like when I first kind of looked at this, I was like, man, that is so cool. You don't have to really deal with a server endpoint to get the initial data that you want. You can instead, you can just make your query looking as if you're right in your front end. You can tap your database right from here. So we're gonna do that. And with that in mind, Lee, one thing I was wondering is, you know, I don't know the ins and outs of like what exactly is happening in this getServerSideProps function, like how it ties things up. Do you have anything you want to offer, just like in terms of like a really quick synopsis about like what exactly is getServerSideProps doing?
Yeah. So a little brief on how you fetch data in Next.js. It really comes down to, do I want to fetch this data on the server side or on the client side? If you're on the server side, the function is called getServerSideProps. It runs any Node.js code, and critically, it is not included in the client side bundle. So that's the magic of using Next with Prisma, is that you can query your database directly. You can run this code that, you know, contains secrets as environment variables to connect to these services, and you can run it on the server, and it's all within the bounds of the same application, but this code is actually stripped and not sent to the client-side JavaScript bundles. Instead, when you return these props, it's converted into JSON, essentially, that's included in the initial payload of the page.
Right.
If you're doing static generation, you can use getStaticProps, which is the same thing as essentially as far as how it forwards props, except that you're not fetching new data on every request.
Mm-hmm.
You're only fetching it once to build the HTML for that page.
Right. Where does, like, if you deploy your website, your application, you know, like every time you hit this page, for example, this is going to be dynamic, like it's going to get whatever you get when you first render that page. So where does this run, I guess? Does this run in a serverless function when you deploy, I guess?
Yeah, it depends where you deploy to. If you deploy just standard Next.js, just the standard output you get, which is next start, it's a Node.js server, and you can deploy that to basically anywhere that supports a Node.js server, and that will it will not be a serverless function. It will just be similar to like an Express server.
Mm-hmm.
And when you would hit this request and you would hit this page, it would talk to that Next.js server and it would return the correct response.
Right. Awesome. Okay. That's great. Thank you. And so yes, like in this spot, we can basically do server-side stuff. So this is something that you would do normally if you were, you know, on a server endpoint. But here we have the opportunity to do it right within our function, our component. So here's what we'll do. We'll say const products equals await Prisma. We don't yet have Prisma. We need to import that. So again, we're using global Prisma. So import Prisma from, and we go one level up into DB. Yeah, there it is, DB. So that's where Prisma comes from. Again, you'll want to use global Prisma in development, especially because that gives you a better experience. But typically, like in other environments, you'd get Prisma clients. From at Prisma clients, you'd instantiate it and do your stuff. So anyway, products equals await Prisma product find many. Oops, that was definitely not what I wanted. Find many. So this gives us our products, and you know, we can log that out. Console.log products. If you're newer to Next.js, be aware that when you log this, it's not going to be logged in the browser. It's going to be logged on the server side. So in your terminal that you're running, error. So I want to return as props my products like this. So let's run this and just see what we get. So if we go to, where's my example here? I'll pull this over. So I'm getting, this error because the data wasn't coming through. Let's try refreshing. We save that. Return props. Product array. So there's our product type. Let's try npm run dev just to restart this. Product card is missing the following. What am I getting wrong here? Source prop is missing in the next components. Can we even get a look at what we have? Products in the, I'm just getting hit with this immediately. So let's just see. This is live debugging. Apologies, but we'll figure this out. Let's comment all of this out. Something is missing somewhere. I may have misnamed something at some point, but we're going to figure it all out here. Here is our data. Image points to this.
So it's image and not SRC, maybe?
Did I call it SRC before, though? That's weird. Product card. Here's our product. Oh, this is why. Yes, because I'm in sort of this weird state. I've got this yeah, that's what it is. I hard coded in some data to satisfy the branching that I was doing. So yeah, I said earlier, don't worry about your branches. I'm going to disregard my own advice. Let's do this. Git Checkout. I changed too much to make this viable. Git Checkout 04 start, and we're going to redo this, and we're going to force that checkout. And that will look better. It's in a much better state now for us to work with. Okay, so let's one more time back into index. We've got our to-do that I set up. That's another good reason, actually, to be starting at the starting branches, because I've got these to-dos set up for you. So very quickly, again, repetition is good here to solidify our learning. We do const products equals await Prisma product. That comes as type, that's type hinted for us. And we do a find many. Then we return our products as props. We'll wrap this in a try catch. This is what I do. I don't know if this is the best way. Do you use try catch like this, Lee?
I do, yeah.
One thing I'm not super clear on that I haven't dug into is like propagating errors properly if you're doing try catch.
Yeah, in this case, if there is an error on the server and you're doing get server side props, you probably will obviously, yeah, you want to log it to some, persisted storage,
Tracking,
ideally.
right.
And then I would say probably gracefully handle it, whether that's redirecting to your error page or, letting the user know somehow.
Yep, makes a lot of sense. Something is wrong on my page, I think, because I'm not getting, prettier is not working for me, but I don't know. Let's see. I don't see anything wrong.
I love that. I do that same thing too. It's so handy. It's like, oh,
really
Pretier's not formatting. Something's wrong.
See what we got. Nothing was wrong. We got it. Woohoo!
Nice.
Okay, so there's our products. And yeah, so again, if you're tracking with us, the issue was get yourself to that 04 start branch. Ignore what I said previously. This is what you want. And yes, products, we get it on the server side. We're not querying from the client side. This gives us server-side rendering, good for SEO, good for performance, good for lots of reasons. And yes, there we go. There we have it. What I'll do is I'll look for other to-dos that we've got. We have another get server-side-props task to do, and that's in the individual product page. One thing I wonder about, Lee, maybe you can speak to this, is like, performance, like what would you recommend? I've seen situations with get server side props where the app feels sluggish. Maybe it's like a long running query that happens in the getServerSideProps function. And so like what you might do is you might click a link and the page you're going to is server-side rendered. So like you feel stuck for a second until you actually load the page.
Yep.
Any general recommendations about what to do there beyond just like, optimize your data?
Yeah. So the majority of the time, what this comes down to is how much data you are fetching inside of getServerSideProps. Because when you're doing getServerSideProps, you're making the trade-off of I need up-to-date data on every request, but I am making the conscious decision that this is a blocking request. So my page doesn't resolve until that data is fetched. Now, there's definitely things you can do to help optimize this. One, it depends on where you host your database infrastructure at, but a general recommendation is that your Next.js server or your serverless functions are located geographically in the same region as where your database is, such that there's less latency communicating between those two. So if my database is, I got a Postgres database with Amazon or AWS and it's in US East, maybe I deploy my node server or I put my Vercel functions in US East as well too. If that's still slow and you have the opportunity to add caching, you can put a caching layer in there. If you're self-hosting, this could be something like Redis. If you're using Vercel, we have edge caching built into our network. So you can just do context.res for response dot set header and put cache control headers directly on there. After content has been cached, the next request is effectively a static page. It's the same benefit as if it was getStaticProps. So that's an effective strategy as well too. But then even larger, like ideally you try to move things to getStaticProps if possible. It really depends on the type of application, on whether you would want to do server rendering or whether you'd want to do static rendering. Right. A good example is like the Vercel dashboard. So if you think of like a single page app style, complex user auth based, like multiple nested layouts and flows, we actually used to be getServerSideProps and we ended up changing it to static props plus client-side rendering. Okay. And the reason was we did extensive profiling and found that from a user experience perspective, it was actually better to serve a loading state, a skeleton state, followed by fetching the user information on the client side versus blocking that page load, waiting for that user data, especially as the amount of data grew on the dashboard.
That makes a lot of sense. Yep. Yeah. I feel like I have started to opt for that as well myself, that it's preferable to show something as soon as possible and then that loading skeleton, right? That's a better, as a user, that's often the better feel.
And one of the great things that I like about Next.js is that, that's really up to the developers and the product team to develop and decide on. And the great thing about Next.js is that you can easily make that change without having to, dump your static framework and go to something that's completely different.
Totally. Yep. That's great. That is awesome. Cool. Well, let's work on the individual product page next. What we've got here is the index page. When you click to show details, a bunch of stuff missing because we haven't actually gotten the data for these pages. So looking into my pages here, index, that's where we got this query coming through already. And this directory, if you're not familiar with Next.js routing, if you create a directory in the pages directory, it's going to sort of map all of this out to the URL bar. So products I've created here, this directory, and then in braces here, or brackets ID, that's going to look for a specific ID coming from either context in getServerSideProps, or I guess just, does it come through as props just generally through in the component? Or do you have to sort of pass it down?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
Yeah, if you're working just like in the client side here, and you're working with like a routed ID, for example, is that just available on props.query.id right away, or do you have to do something for that?
Yeah, so at the page level, you can pull that off inside of getStaticProps or getServerProps. If you're in the component, you can use the router the use router from
Use router.
Next.js.
Okay. So you do have to reach for that. Okay.
Mhm.
Makes sense. All right, cool. Well, good. So this is the individual page, and a note on this, if you're not familiar, get server-side props. This is, and correct me if I'm wrong, Lee, but this is only available if you're in the pages directory. Essentially, you have to
Correct.
be in the pages directory to use get server-side props. If you tried to just use it in a components,
Mhm.
you'll have no luck. So
Correct. And to be clear, this is probably one of the most common feature requests, which is I want to use get server-side props or get static props at the component level.
Right.
And the solution for this is actually React server components, which we're
Okay.
working with the React team on to land at some point this year. If we were to, add this in the interim, it would be all for naught, as React server components will essentially replace get server-side props.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, but I've wondered what the story is going to be for that when it comes along, what it's going to do for next. Okay, cool. Well, let's work on this to do. We need to get the individual product from by doing a query to Prisma. So the way that it looks is like this. We can get our const ID. We'll destructure this off of context.query. That is going to be this part of the URL here, the ID that gets sent through. That's our database ID, essentially. We're at /products/the ID. Then we need to make a query to Prisma. So we can say const product. Is that how I have it? Yeah, product equals await Prisma product find. We got a couple different ways of finding. So you can do find many. That's what we saw before. And then there's find unique and find first. So there's like some indication given here, sort of how these work. You can read more in detail in the Prisma docs, but like find first, if you provide like a where clause, which I guess like you have to do where like this, it's going to just find the first record that satisfies that condition. So it's okay to use this here because the ID is something that we are going to have that's unique. So it's only going to find one of them. So no big deal. ID, the way that this will look is you say equals, and then what is it? It's not an object. We want to point to ID. And this is where things are like in TypeScript land are a little bit funny, right? Like ID is a string here, or it's string or string array or undefined. Like that's coming from Next, right? That's like just what Next provides in its type definitions. So this doesn't satisfy Prisma because Prisma says that when you pass a value to here in the where clause, this has to be of type string. And because ID coming off of context.query is of this type, string or string array or undefined, it's not assignable. So quick hack, I guess you call it a hack, is string ID as string, right? You can just say ID as string. We want to say that it's going to be a string always, just run with it. You could do that, or like, I mean, you could also do this, like if no ID, I suppose, like do other stuff, right? I guess you could do that, but I don't know. This is what I would do. Would you recommend anything else here, Lee, or what would you say?
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
Okay. Yes, so ID as string. And one quick note here is we get the benefits of Prisma type safety. If you do control spacebar, if you're on a Mac anyway, you get the options that you're allowed to do. So there's lots of goodies there. What we want obviously is where, and this is where I like it. It's like at every level here, you can just start doing control spacebar, and you can see what you're able to do. So I want the ID, where ID. What do I get next? Contains, ends with, right? Like all these different options. We want equals, and like we saw before, ID is string. Cool. All right, product is there. We'll pass it through in the return. We'll do try catch to wrap this up nicely. So we will try that. We will catch an error. Just logging it out right now. What do we have here? Something is not happy. It's not assignable to type getServerSideProps key string.
Do you need to await something?
Oh, did I not await?
Oh no, you have it. Okay, I saw the promise in there.
That's interesting. I guess so return. Yeah, this was fine in the other get server side props, but I'm realizing in my code example that I've got up, like that I finished out, I didn't have the try catch.
Yeah, I think it's because there's no return in the catch.
But we didn't return in the other one either, right? So, right,
Hmm.
in index. Oh, we're not type hinting it in this case.
Mm.
So that is likely what's happening.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's because it's typed.
Okay, anyway, this isn't super happy. I guess we can just delete it. But then the context isn't happy because it has an implicit any. So that's I guess that's my what happened. How I arrived here is you start out like this, untyped. Context isn't happy. You don't want to have an implicit any. So then you go ahead and type it as get server side props. But for whatever reason, this isn't liking it. I think I've got an extra brace here. Maybe that's what it was. Yeah. So for whatever reason, I guess the when I do a try catch, it wasn't liking it because I wasn't returning. We could go fix that, or we could check out to see if we have anything good coming through, and we do. There is our product, and we can check out our other ones. So for those who are following along, just to make sure you're at where we're at, this ID is being pulled through in the components, through context, in the page, I should say, in the getServerSideProps function, and we're pulling it off like this, destructuring it, and we're finding by that ID to provide this data down to our component. And we're good to go. All right, I think that was the last to do for this one. And I'm gonna double check what we've got here. Also gonna double check the time. Did you have a hard stop, Lee, by the way?
My hard stop will be in 21 minutes.
Okay, so let's try to rifle through because I did want to keep this to 2 hours as close as possible. I just want to make sure I touched everything in module 4. Done. All right. So for all the folks in the crowd, let's do git checkout 05 start. And we'll force it. Let's overwrite. We'll force that. Once you've got that, go ahead and npm run dev and refresh the page once it gets going. You should now see this reviews area and some UI for adding a review. And so let's check out the to-dos here. This is going to highlight one other area that's really useful. I mean, there's several areas that are useful for using Prisma with Next, but one is this like API route area. So I've created this API folder. I've got review.ts, and I've got 2 different requests types that I'm responding to: get requests and post requests. So this one here, this get request, this is optional because this could essentially replace, the reason I've got it here is to demonstrate how you would replace like a getServerSideProps call for data to instead be a client call for data at an endpoint. So if you did want to get your data, your reviews at an endpoint, you can get it here. But the other option is you can just get it using getServerSideProps, which we do have set up. But you need to use an API route or another server environment, whatever, for creating data. And so our job here is to get the review body and basically just use Prisma to put that into the database. So I will see what I've got here in pages API. Since we're running tight on time, I will just kind of speed through this in some ways, but if anyone's got questions, I'll definitely answer questions at the end. So we're using just like a typical fetch request to make this happen. In this case, we're not using anything fancy like SWR or React Query, just a plain old fetch request. So it's going to come through as stringified JSON. So we can do a JSON.parse on the request.body. So that'll give us our data. And we'll assume, just in this case, I mean, we can do some checks for this and validation, but we'll assume that this data contains what we need for our reviews. So then we'll say const review equals await Prisma review create. And the way create works is you give it an object and you give it a data key, and then that's got to either point to some data like this, or since we have data here, we can just have the field name be the object name as well. If you wanted to, so that's one way to do it, and we'll see how this works. Basically, like the data, I mean, let's just console.log this, console.log data. We'll see if we can get a review in the database. I think I'm set up in the reviews component, new review, I'm calling it. I think I'm set up to make that request. It may not be though. No, it was a to-do to actually make that request. So we can do, for the sake of time, I'm just going to copy and paste some stuff here from the final components, new review. Here we go. The on submit is what I'm going to copy in. Oops. So on submit, we've got just like a fetch call going. I'm hard coding this user ID. Again, this is like only half an application built out, so we don't have like a way to actually do true user authentication. So come over here, grab your user ID, and then in your post call to the API route, you can stringify your data that comes through in the on submit handler from this form. And it uses React hook form, by the way. That's what I chose for this one. So it goes to API/review. It's a post request, stringifies that data plus a user ID and a product ID, which comes through as props. So with that, we should be able to make this request. Let's see. So great shorts, 5 stars. Open up the console here and submit. In the network tab, we went to review. It's pending. Nothing is being returned. And so let's see what we have in the terminal. In the terminal, so this logging is coming from the API route. Over here, APIs, API reviews.ts. I've got this review. I'm not returning it right now. Basically, what I want to do is return it when we're done. And the reason that I've got this with a red squiggly is that my type hinting here, post success response, we want to include the user with it. That's kind of the final step. So we'll see how to get that. But I wanted to make a comment on this in that what we get through here is the user ID and the product ID. So we can just like put those into the table right away. But what used to be the case with Prisma is that you actually had to specify the connection between different relations in your table. And it gives you more of like a safe way to do it, I suppose you could say. And so I'll just show that quickly. Pages, API. If we wanted to do that, what it would look like is this. We'd have our data. So we'd say text, that's part of our review. Then we have rating, data.rating. And then we would want to do this. We'd have to connect to a user. So user connect. And then we'd say the user ID, ID is going to point, I've got the wrong braces in here. ID will point to data.user_ID. This would sort of like connect this to the user table. This is how you used to have to do it in Prisma. You can actually just like put the values right in the database now, but you know, this is, I think we still recommend this as the way that you do it. ID is equal to data.product ID. All right, cool. So what you can do is you can also, so that's like the input. So that's the data that you want to input. And then on the way back, what you get, you can say that you want to include the user. So include user true. This is the way that you get the user object back. So why don't we log out what we get, console.log review. And now TypeScript is happy because we're sending back what we told it that we wanted to send back. And now let's try this again. We will come back over here and we will say, so that didn't go into the database, it looks like. These are great. Okay, so here we go. This is what we get back from Prisma. We get all the stuff for the review plus the user. And then that makes our front end happy because it's expecting this. And if we refresh now, I assume this is in the database. It's not. Why isn't it persisting? Let's see. Review. Yeah, we've got a bunch of these. I wonder what the issue is. Maybe it's, oh, these IDs are changing, I think, because of me changing through through branches in Git. So that might be, maybe it's the user that's the issue. What would that be? Review, the latest one. These are great. That was the latest one that I put in. This user ID ends in ZY. ZY. Product. Cargo shorts. Oh, I know, because we haven't actually built that out yet, that part to get the reviews. So in an individual review, what we want to do is when we go to get a product, we essentially want to get the reviews back at the same time. And I know you got to go in 2 minutes here, Lee. I'll just finish out this one quick thing and then we'll say bye. Essentially, you would just say where, and then you would say include reviews true. In theory, this should do it for us. But it does not. We'll have to debug. Oh, this is probably why I'm pointing to an empty array. So I think what I did here is I said reviews. It should be product.reviews if that exists. Product and product.reviews, then product.reviews, otherwise an empty array. Try that. Doesn't like that. Probably because I need to say include reviews, and on that include users. True. Include the user with the review. Boom, there we go. We got it. Awesome, Lee. So we'll stop there for you. I appreciate you joining us today. Thank you so much. Where can people find you if they want to follow up?
Yeah. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. You can find me on Twitter at LeeRob with 3 E's or at my site, leerob.io.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Lee. Yeah, I'll follow up with you after and really appreciate you coming on and helping out and sharing your wisdom.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone.
See you, Lee.
Bye.
All right, folks. So we're in the home stretch here. So let's see. I want to just do a quick search for what we have left to do to round out this application. I think we're basically there. And then we are going to just do questions. That'll be it. I talked about this, the optional step of putting up a GET request to get your reviews. And this is if you want to call from the client side. This is if you just want to, instead of doing server-side rendering, you can call from the client side. So you could do reviews equals await Prisma review find many. And you would say where product ID equals, how do we do this down here? Would that be on the query, I guess? Let me see how I did it in the final version. Yeah, it is on the request body data. Yeah, okay. So it's same thing. It's const data equals JSON parse the request body. You parse that as JSON and you'd say product ID where it equals data.product ID. You're going to assume that comes back. And then you can just pass those back, those reviews. And that's if you want to have an endpoint to query from. What else? We took care of this to do, so that's done. And then include the reviews in the query for products. We just did that as well. So query the syntax for Prisma, you say include, you say what you want to include, you want to include reviews, and then you can keep nesting here. You could just say, like, if you didn't need the users, you could just say include reviews true. So that works, just the reviews. But then you could say include user true. Sorry, you need to do include user true, like that. You could do include user, and then what's connected to a user, a product. So I think you can keep going here. Include products true. Or you could go another level because these are all related to each other, right? Include users true. Let's see what this gives us. Is this going to work? So if we refresh here, What do we get? Let's log it out. So here's product, console.log product. I may not like it. So product, refresh. There we go. Check it out. It's like super deeply nested. You can just keep going with it. So there is stringify product null2, so we can see the shape of it. So, oh yeah, okay. So it only will give you, no, that makes sense. Like none of these users are actually tied to products right now. So that's why it's not giving it to us there, but like reviews, we could probably do that. Reviews, true. Include, so reviews include user, true. That should work, I think. Let's see. Yeah, so we get super deep nesting. So, there's this issue, I guess, like that you could have infinite nesting if you weren't careful, although you'd have to try pretty hard to have infinite nesting. So, yeah, just make sure you keep it to a single level if that's all you need. User, true. Let's make sure this still works. I think we're good. Awesome. Okay. Well, I think that's it. I think we're basically at the end. This to-do is done, and we've got none left. Okay, cool. Well, I need to find the Q&A here and also the chat, and I'll be answering questions. So the first one I see in the Q&A, have you ever seen TypeGraphQL for Prisma 2? I have seen TypeGraphQL for Prisma, Prisma 2 specifically, and it works pretty well. I haven't given it like a really fair shake. But from what I've seen, like the initial stuff that I've seen of it, it does seem to work quite well. They go well together. So I'd recommend trying it out if you're so inclined. Let's open up the chat here. I'm gonna just do sort of a back log into the chat to finish us out here. Okay, so I'm starting at Jacob's question. Could you talk a bit about how to handle errors in getServerSideProps? Lee mentioned a little bit about that. You'd want to look for an error and handle it gracefully. Maybe you redirect to another page. Maybe you show an error message if that's the case. I think it's highly context dependent though, unfortunately. So there's no one size fits all. Is the recording available somewhere after this? This will be available, yes. Can we select specific fields with the include? Yes. So where's a good example of that? Include review. Here's what we would do. Review, say we wanted to include maybe the user's just their first name, user, just their first name and their last name, because I think that's all we need for this UI. We would do select. So we do user select. First name, true. Last name, true. And that should do the job. Let's see. Yep. So yeah, that's how you do it. You would do a select, reach for select. You can basically use select at like many different levels. So give that a shot. So that was Scott's question. Then Joseph asks, or Joseph says, thank you. You're welcome, Joseph. Then we've got, yes, sure, you can use the select API. And then we've got an code example. I can see Prisma will work well for small projects. How will Prisma work with standard REST endpoints in a production database? Like if I want to implement Prisma at Zillow where I work in a project, maybe with GraphQL interface. Right now in my project, I use React Query. Yes, Prisma. So I think, the evidence says that it works extremely well in large projects, in large databases. And there are a few reasons for this. One is that the type hinting that you get, like the generated types that you get from Prisma, are super useful as you scale stuff up to work across large teams specifically, because you are going to be able to communicate about what you can do with your database, what the shape of it is, etc., with other developers very easily. They just have to look at basically what's available on the Prisma object, right? So they look into Prisma, they see what they can do and what they can't do. what's great about it too is like Prisma prevents you from being able to do things that you shouldn't be able to do with your database. So, if you open up your application to development by other developers that aren't super familiar with the database, you'll have some layer of protection there. Then I think the other thing to note too is like, because Prisma is, provides these tools that sit on top of like existing databases, as long as you're happy with your existing database, say it's Postgres, for example, and it's performing well and you've got indexes set up well, you're not taking any kind of performance penalty or anything by using Prisma. It passes through to the database if that's set up well. I mean, you've got the minuscule amount of hop time between Prisma and your database, but the benefits of layering Prisma on top outweigh any kind of, in my mind, they outweigh any kind of, small microscopic time lags that you might encounter. So it's super good for teams, works well with existing databases. One thing that we didn't look at is this command called Prisma Introspect. So you can do npx, if you have an existing database and you're connected to it, you can do npx Prisma Introspect. And that will give you, in your Prisma directory, in your schema file, it'll basically just lay out your entire database for you. And I've tried this with huge databases, and it just populates a whole model file for you. So you're not doing all of these by hand, one by one. Instead, you get the introspection tool to derive your database schema for you. So yeah, lots to love about Prisma. In large settings. So hopefully that answers that, Oscar. Do feel free to reach out to me if you have more questions on my Twitter, Ryan Chenkie on Twitter, or you can email me at chenkie@prisma.io. Thank you for your question. Sweet. There's some thank yous in here. Thank you for saying thank you to everyone. I meant in the context of satisfying TypeScript with not returning props. This is Jacob's question. Not returning props if the error occurs. I see. Yeah, I got to look into that a bit more, Jacob, because I'm not too sure exactly what to do. But I am curious about going back to, was it this one? Yeah, we're type hinted here. So let's just circle back to what I was trying. Try catch. So here's a try. Let's return all of this. So that's in the try block. Then we want our catch block. Catch error. What we were doing before is just console.logging the error. In this case, getServerSideProps is not happy because it's not assignable. What if we just return the error? What do we get? Now it's happy. We've returned the error from getServerSideProps. I don't exactly know what you're going to do with this, though. Maybe you do this. You put it on props, the error. It's happy there. Maybe it's something like that. I'm not too sure. I'll have to explore this a bit more for like a real use case. But yes, that is one option, I suppose. All right, where were we? Aaron says, does Prisma do any caching? Are there any precautions to take when using it against AWS? No caching. No caching in Prisma, although this is something that you can look forward to on the Prisma roadmap as we develop our kind of product roadmap. Is, considerations like caching certainly will probably be in there in the various products that we want to roll out. Yeah, and there's a bunch of stuff we can do around that. If you happen to be using GraphQL, one of our former employees, very early employee, Tim, along with Max Stoiber, they just released a new product called graphcdn.io, and take a look at the landing page here. You should see immediately like the benefit of this. Basically, this is a caching layer for your GraphQL requests with cache busting when you make mutations. Super cool, like response time of 22 milliseconds after you have it initially cached. So if you happen to be using GraphQL, that's super cool. I'm going to be using this in my next project. All right, I believe to satisfy TS, you would return props still, but with any empty product. Yes. Okay, so Chad, that's a good point. Maybe the best thing to do then is in the catch, you return props, product, null, whatever, and you can check for it in your Yeah, product null, and then maybe just report your error. Like that, something like that. Might be a good way to do it. Where were we? Joey says, I've already set up Graph CDN. That's awesome that you've been enjoying it. I got to try it. Sweet. Okay. So thank you everyone so much for being here today. This is it. If there are any other questions, you can go to Twitter and find me there. I'm at Ryan Chenkie on Twitter. So here's my handle. So you can find me here. Yeah, feel free to drop any questions you've got into my messages or just hit me up in a regular tweet. Or if you want, here's my email. Here, I'll put this in the chat. So Twitter is here, and then email is chenkie@prisma.io. Feel free to send me an email. So yes, thank you everyone. This has been a lot of fun. I hope everyone has benefited in some way from being here today. I've had a lot of fun answering questions and hanging out with Lee and all of you. So hope to do it again. In the meantime, take care, and yeah, we'll hopefully see everyone again.